Hello and welcome to this video about OpenSpec, a spec-driven development tool. There are quite a few great videos out there which talk about what OpenSpec is. What I'm going to focus on here is what makes OpenSpec unique, and that is the workflow itself. Now, in this swim lane diagram, what we have is the interaction between us, the humans, and the AI, which could be your Claude Code, your Codex CLI, or your Gemini CLI, and the files that are generated. Now, OpenSpec has a three-phase process. We propose, we apply, and then we archive a change. When we propose a change, the AI helps us draft the change proposal in terms of a delta format. A delta format is basically, it says what is being added, modified, and removed as part of this particular feature addition. Now, this is crucial because in the final step, I'll tell you why this matters. Now, eventually, once you're happy with this and you review it and you wanna, go ahead and implement this change, you say apply. And that will go through the task list and completes the tasking itself. And basically your implementation is generated. Now, if you're happy with your implementation, you can ship it. And once it's shipped, you can say this particular change has been achieved. So let's archive it. At this point is where the unique capability of OpenSpec comes in, wherein it merges, or rather takes this delta that you created and then merges it into something called a source of truth specification. Now, what is a source of truth specification? So for this, let me give you a rough comparison with how GitHub Spec Kit operates. I have the sample project here, or rather a live project which I'm actually using and building. This I've been building it with Spec Kit. And if those of you are familiar, Spec Kit generates a folder for each specification or specify feature that I go through. Now, the difficulty I have here is I may have introduced a capability in feature number 1, and subsequently when I built feature number 6, I may have removed it or modified it significantly. So at any given point in time, I cannot say that all of these specifications which are sitting inside the specs folder are representative of the actual code or the implementation that exists in this particular repo. And that's only the beginning, right? There can be a lot more deviation. So basically what it means is the specs here, because of the workflow itself, is not necessary for all of them to be in line with the actual application code at any given point in time. And this is where OpenSpec significantly differs. Now, this is another website which I've been building with OpenSpec. And OpenSpec has two separate folders. One is called the changes, where you can keep the archived sections. This is very much similar to how the GitHub Spec Kit, if you want to call it, right? It's got all the feature related documents here. And if you look at any change which you look at, let's open some of this. And if you open the spec, you will see that it's in the delta format that I mentioned. So let me open the navigation. If I open the specs section, you'll notice that it says these are the requirements that were added as part of this feature to add a markdown blog. And this is the modifications that were made to the navigation as part of this particular feature. And once I built this feature and archived it, all of this got merged into my source of truth specification, which sits right here at the top level. And this is my overall navigation spec for the current application as it stands. So this is fully in lockstep with the actual code. And this is really, really important from a concept that was explained very well by Birgitta in her blog post on martinfowler.com. What she classifies spec-driven development tools is based on how much the spec and the code are in line with each other based on spec first, spec anchored, and spec as source. Now, spec first is where you use the spec-driven development tool to come up with the detailed tasking and the spec for building out the application itself. But thereafter, do you strive to keep the application code in line with the spec? Maybe not. It's just throw away, right? It's a thinking process. But spec anchored is interesting because at this point, you can potentially say that the spec and the code are always in line. And this is where I find OpenSpec unique, because OpenSpec has the source of truth specification, which can technically be called as something that we can anchor the application on. I could make a small little code change and try running a validate, and the validate might fail. Or I can make a spec change and if I run the validate, it'll fail. So basically there's a potential here to keep the source of truth specification anchored with the actual application itself. And that's what makes it unique. Now, obviously we could all strive for spec as source, which is how I generally operate even now. I never make code changes. I only make changes from the spec itself. If I need to make even a tiny bit of change, I propose it, and then that translates into code. But do we want to go there? Maybe that's another talk by itself or another video. But for now, what I'll leave you with is, if you haven't tried out OpenSpec, it's an interesting tool. It's quite fast. It's very, very quick in terms of iteration. I personally like it, and I use it quite extensively. And its unique capability is the source of truth specification, which makes it, the, what do you call, you could potentially call it the spec-anchored spec-driven development tool. So that's all I had for this video. This is Hari Krishnan. I'll catch you on the next one.